hey, go ahead and do me a favor and go ahead and hit that thumbs up, like, and hit that bell icon, and do all the call to action social media things you're supposed to do. There's so many I can't keep track. Also, I got this epic shirt of chaos. This is available in the channel store. Link below. There's all types of stuff in there. We got mugs, we got jogging shorts, we got pretty much everything you can think of. And if I think of something new, or even if there's something you'd like me to add, you can just tell me and I'll go ahead and add it. All that type of stuff is below and it's awesome. So please check it out. I want to stress how much I respect this move. This organized chaos video is brought to you by Gems Art Studio. Gems Art Studio is an online store that allows access to prints that you can use for most anything, obviously as just a picture, or as a wallpaper, or as a bookmark, or anything you can think of. You can find Gems Art Studio at etsy.com/shop/Gems Art Studio. This video is also brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. On Monday, January 24th of 2022, Neil Young posted an open letter to his manager and label asking that his music be removed from Spotify. This letter has since been deleted. This is because Spotify is the home of Joe Rogan, who has unfortunately spent a fair amount of time peddling vaccine misinformation.
And people say, do you think it's safe to get vaccinated? I've said, yeah, I think for the most part it's safe to get vaccinated. I do. But if you're like 21 years old and you say to me, should I get vaccinated? I go, no. Yeah. Are you healthy? Are you a healthy person? Like, look, don't do anything stupid, but you should take care of yourself. You should, if you're a healthy person and you're exercising all the time and you're young and you're eating well, and like, I don't think you need to worry about this.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you.
But there's a lot of jobs that will tell you need to have this.
Well, that's what's starting to happen now.
People are worried about them doing it for their children. And we talked about this earlier. Yeah. There's that you might have to have your children vaccinated. And, you know, I can tell you as someone who's both my children got the virus, it was nothing. I mean, I hate to say that. If someone's children died from this, I'm very sorry that happened. I'm not in any way diminishing that, but I'm saying the personal experience that my children had with COVID was nothing. One of the kids had a headache. The other one didn't feel good for a couple days. Yeah. Like, maybe, I mean, not feel good. Like no big deal. No coughing. Right. No achy. No like in agony. There was none of that. It was very mild. It was akin to them getting a cold.
Yeah, and you can have this thing where it's like you were saying, this virtue signaling and this kind of like theatrical display of I get the vaccine, what a good person I am, I care about everyone. But you're like, look, my daughter's a lot younger than your kids, but I'm like, yeah, I'm not injecting my daughter with something to fucking virtue signal. Right. Like, I'm not doing that. Right. If there's something that she's of no risk, statistically has no risk from, right, I'm sorry, I'm not taking any experiment on her in that. And that's my attitude toward it.
But it's amazing that that's controversial.
Yeah.
That even saying that, I'm not going to inject my child with the vaccine, is controversial. Yeah. It's crazy. Because, again, we are not talking about even the flu that we just found out killed 22,000 people last year. We're not talking about that.
Right.
We're talking about something that is not statistically dangerous for children. But yet people still want you to get your child vaccinated, which is crazy to me.
In the letter, Young said, please immediately inform Spotify that I am actively canceling all my music availability on Spotify as soon as possible. I am doing this because Spotify is spreading false information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them. Please act on this immediately today and keep me informed of the time schedule. I want you to let Spotify know immediately today that I want all my music off their platform. They can have Rogan or Young, not both. Thanks. Love, Earth, be well, Neil Young. I want to stress how much I respect this move. This isn't a move done with financial incentives. In fact, he's likely going to lose money over this, but rather because he thinks it's the right thing to do. It is a very base thing to do, but it's also very flawed. To properly go over this, let's look at the players involved.
I'm going to do this song. I don't mean it to be a downer, but one of my songs. What can I tell you?
Born on November 12, 1945, his music career started in a series of bands, starting with Buffalo Springfield, followed by Crazy Horse, then by Crosby, Stills, and Nash, a band he only agreed to join if he became a full-time member, turning the band into Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. His tenure with the band represents their most successful period. This led him into a solo career. He's been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, as a solo artist and as a member of Buffalo Springfield. Young was number 34 in Rolling Stone's Top 100 Musical Artists list in 2000. He frequently would use an electric guitar with a reverb, which would help name him the godfather of grunge. Nirvana's Kurt Cobain and Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder would both cite Young as major influences on their music. Pearl Jam would even do an album with Young, 1995's Mirrorball. So to call Neil Young a legend in music would be a very conservative statement.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Joe Rogan was born August 11, 1967. He started his career in comedy before moving on to having regular spots on the sitcoms Hardball and News Radio. He would then move on to hosting shows like Fear Factor and UFC events before going into podcasting in 2009. He now has the biggest podcast on the planet, earning an average of 11 million downloads per show. The Joe Rogan Experience is such a big podcast, it would actually be fair to say every podcaster owes some inspiration to Joe Rogan. Even me, to be 100% honest. On May 19th, 2020, it was announced that Joe Rogan had a $100 million deal with Spotify. He maintains ownership of his podcast, but Spotify would have exclusive streaming rights. Rogan has been a figure of controversy throughout his career, but during the past year, when vaccines have come out to combat COVID, Rogan seems to have gone in the direction of delivering misleading information on the vaccines.
There's some legitimate science behind this. It's not. This is like the thing about this whole thing, this people being upset at me. I didn't say I'm not an anti-vax person.
Right.
In fact, I said I believe they're safe, and I encourage many people to take them. My parents were vaccinated. I just said I don't think that if you're a young, healthy person that you need it.
This is despite the fact that practically all science has now shown the COVID vaccines are safe, and any side effects from them are significantly less than the side effects of catching COVID. Despite this, Rogan will continue to voice anti-vaccine sentiments. He has been in a pattern for some time of saying something negative about the vaccine, then rolling it back by saying he's dumb and you shouldn't take his advice, and then providing more bad advice.
Any medication, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm a fucking moron. And I'm a cage fighting commentator who's a dirty stand-up comedian who just told you I'm drunk most of the time. And I do testosterone and I smoke a lot of weed. But I'm not a respected source of information, even for me. If I say things, I'm always going, check on that, Jamie. I don't know if that's true.
Right.
I do that all the time.
It's all part of the greater Joe Rogan problem. He has a massive platform that he uses wildly irresponsibly. And the fact is, he's just a dumb podcaster. And his medical advice shouldn't be taken. But then why the fuck is he providing medical advice? There was a clip that went viral not long ago. In it, Rogan asserts that there is an increased chance of getting myocarditis from getting the vaccine. But the guest, Josh Epps, points out that the chance of getting myocarditis is much worse from getting COVID. Rogan doesn't believe this.
Or there's an adverse risk associated with the vaccine. It's like a 2 to 4-fold increase in the instances of myocarditis.
Yes, but you know what?
Hospitalization.
You know that there's an increased risk of myocarditis among that age cohort from getting COVID as well, which exceeds the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. No. I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID that are young versus increased risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
No, there is. There's both.
Well, let's look that up because I don't think that's true. Myocarditis more common after COVID-19 infection than vaccination. But is this with children? Yeah, we're talking about young people.
Men and boys aged under 30 after this is what it says here.
With children is the issue.
Well, no, we were talking about 15-year-olds.
Well, we're talking about young children.
Male child. 12 to 17.
12 to 17, more likely to develop myocarditis within 3 months of catching COVID at a rate of 450 cases per million infection. This compares to 67 cases of myocarditis per million of the same time following their second dose of Pfizer.
Yeah, so you're about 8 times likelier to get myocarditis from getting COVID than from getting the vaccine.
That's interesting.
Now, that
is not what I've read before, but also it's like, even when we're reading these things, it's like, what are we getting this from? Was this from
Well,
the
it's the new
VAERS report?
scientist.
However, Rogan has been told this before by Dr. Rhonda Patrick.
But one thing that has occurred in young, healthy people that have been vaccinated is myocarditis. And
Yes.
some people have had blood clots, like quite a few blood clots. And there's speculation, right? The Salk Institute released that paper about the spike protein causing some sort of deterioration of the blood vessels. Did you read that?
I looked at the spike. I've been looking at a lot of the spike protein, and
That's from COVID-19. They're discussing it.
they're talking about from
Right. From the actual disease itself.
Yes. So, first of all, like you have to you're either going to get infected with SARS-CoV-2. Most people are going to be eventually. We're all going to be exposed to it. So you're either going to be vaccinated when you're exposed to it or not. And people are dying from heart attacks and blood clots, and even people are getting myocarditis like 100-fold times more than vaccines. Like the myocarditis link from the mRNA, specifically the mRNA vaccines, is real. And I think the last I saw it was like 50 per million, which it's still rare. And it's
happened to two people that I know.
Up until then, and actually now that you asked me, I forgot. I had someone who's a supporter. I talked about vaccines in one of my Q&As I do, and they went and got it, and they were younger and ended up having some kind of myocarditis. So I do know someone that had I don't know them, but they emailed me.
Now, what happens if you have that? And like, how do you recover from that?
But you realize
And
it's
do you
happening to
recover?
young people. So myocarditis is caused by two things. One, by inflammation. Two, by direct viral infection. And it's more common in adolescents and young people.
And it's an enlargement of the heart?
It's inflammation of the heart. It can lead to that, yeah. But it's happening in young athletes with COVID-19, and it's happening like more frequently than people that are getting vaccinated. So it's still like, well, if the person that got vaccinated, look, it is a risk, but it's still pretty rare, and it also is treatable. In most cases, they treat it like within a few days, and it's isolated.
He just repeats the same lines, no matter how often people prove him wrong to his face. This all came to a head when Rogan had noted vaccine skeptic Dr. Robert Malone on his show. Malone had already been banned by Twitter for sharing his views on the vaccine, and he literally went to the largest podcasting platform in the world to continue to share his misinformation.
The big breakthrough we all celebrated a week ago. Face the Nation. What on the annual roundup of stories that have been underreported. One of the speakers got up, journalist, and said to the other group, I think one of the most underreported stories has been the damage that's happened to our children.
I saw that.
And did you see what happened with the other journalists?
No.
Nobody said a word. They moved on. It was hardly covered in the media.
Well, she even glossed over the damage by the vaccines.
Agreed. How could she speak about the vaccines? I suspect she may lose her job. She's not going to be invited back on that program again.
Since then, an open letter signed by 270 doctors, physicians, and educators has been issued to Spotify to stop Rogan from spreading misinformation on the COVID vaccine. It reads, an open letter to Spotify, a call from the global scientific and medical communities to implement a misinformation policy. On December 31st, 2021, the Joe Rogan Experience, JRE, a Spotify-exclusive podcast, uploaded a highly controversial episode featuring guest Dr. Robert Malone, number 1757. The episode had been criticized for promoting baseless conspiracy theories, and the JRE has a concerning history of broadcasting misinformation, particularly regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. By allowing the propagation of false societal harming assertions, Spotify is enabling its hosted media to damage public trust in scientific research and to sow doubt in its credibility of data-driven guidance offered by medical professionals. JRE number 1757 is not the only transgression to occur on the Spotify platform, but a relevant example of the platform's failure to mitigate the damage it is causing. We are a coalition of scientists, medical professionals, professors, and science communicators spanning a wide range of fields such as microbiology, immunology, epidemiology, and neuroscience. We are calling on Spotify to take action against the mass misinformation events which continue to occur on its platform. With an estimated 11 million listeners per episode, JRE is the world's largest podcast and has tremendous influence. Though Spotify has a responsibility to mitigate the spread of misinformation on its platform, the company presently has no misinformation policy. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, Joe Rogan has repeatedly spread misleading and false claims on his podcast, provoking distrust in science and medicine. He has discouraged vaccination in young people and children, incorrectly claimed that mRNA vaccines are gene therapy, promote off-label use of ivermectin to treat COVID-19, contrary to FDA warnings, and spread a number of unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. In episode 1757, Rogan hosted Dr. Robert Malone, who was suspended from Twitter for spreading misinformation on COVID-19. Dr. Malone used the JRE platform to further promote numerous baseless claims, including several falsehoods about COVID-19 vaccines and an unfounded theory that societal leaders have hypnotized the public. Many of these statements have already been discredited. Notably, Dr. Malone is one of 2 recent JRE guests who has compared pandemic policies to the Holocaust. These actions are not only objectionable, but offensive, and also medically and culturally dangerous. The average age of JRE listeners is 24 years old, and according to data from Washington State, unvaccinated 12 to 34-year-olds are 12 times more likely to be hospitalized with COVID than those who are fully vaccinated. Dr. Malone's interview has reached many tens of millions of listeners vulnerable to predatory medical misinformation. Mass misinformation events of this scale have extraordinarily dangerous ramifications. As scientists, we face backlash and resistance as public grows to distrust our research and expertise. As educators and science communicators, we are tasked with repairing the public's damaged understanding of science and medicine. As physicians, we bear the arduous weight of a pandemic that has stretched our medical systems to their limits and only stands to be exacerbated by an anti-vaccination sentiment woven into this and other episodes of Rogan's podcast. This is not only a scientific or medical concern, it's a sociological issue of devastating proportions, and Spotify is responsible for allowing this activity to thrive on its platform. We, the undersigned doctors, nurses, scientists, and educators, thus call on Spotify to immediately establish a clear and public policy to moderate misinformation on its platform, and it's signed by all the people behind it. This is a very important letter that Spotify has so far yet to address. This brings us back to Neil Young. While I completely respect his stance on this issue, it's also something that seems destined to fail. If forced to choose between Young and Rogan, there is absolutely no way Spotify chooses Young. Young brings in around 13 million listens a month to Spotify between his solo career, Buffalo Springfield, Crazy Horse, and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. That's wildly impressive, but not enough to make Spotify blink. It's why his sentiment seems to be to just leave the platform and be done with it. Right now, Young is saying Rogan or Young, and that's a very easy choice for a business to make since they literally spent $100 million on Rogan and has become a huge draw for them. I'm sure Young pulls in some money for them, but from a business perspective, it's a no-brainer, and Spotify would want a decision to look like that. But Young does have some power here. He proved it when his open letter made headlines. Instead of demanding Spotify choose Rogan or Young, he should instead tell Spotify that he will no longer allow his music to be played on their service unless they stop Rogan from spreading vaccine misinformation. This can be done in a couple ways. The easiest is to just have Rogan stop talking about the vaccine and COVID, something, by his own words, he is not an expert in.
But I'm not a respected source of information, even for me.
However, if he wants to have a guest on with a history like Robert Malone, then ask a medical expert to also sit in on the podcast and make sure the facts are being introduced into the conversation. Free speech is a very important concept to the fabric of the United States, but has limits. Those limits are typically placed when it creates a public harm. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Surely, going on to the biggest podcast in the world and lying about the good of a vaccine during a global pandemic is much worse than that. The check of a medical expert would even allow someone like Malone on the Joe Rogan Experience to say his vaccine lies, but would be counterbalanced with the actual facts about the vaccine. This would change the dynamic being put forth. Instead of making it Rogan versus Young, make it Young versus vaccine misinformation. And if Young put his force behind something like this, and maybe even got a few more artists on his side, he might actually be able to effect a change, because this move would actually put public pressure on Spotify. Literally, if Young asked Spotify to either stop sharing his music or stop spreading vaccine misinformation, and they choose to stop sharing his music, they are effectively saying, we are the home to anti-vax sentiments. That would destroy their brand. Subscribers to their service would leave, and other artists would also leave, not wanting to be associated with the brand. Spotify would become the home of Eric Clapton, Ice Cube, Kid Rock, and pretty much no one else. And when more artists leave, more subscribers will again leave. Spotify would be fucked in that situation. Instead, by removing nuance, all Young is likely to accomplish is having his stuff removed by Spotify, which would obviously suck because he has some really awesome songs. And it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. As of Wednesday, January 26, 2022, NPR reports that Spotify will begin removing Neil Young's work from Spotify. But there is a much better path. If artists don't want to share their platform with people spreading vaccine misinformation, there's a strategy you can take. Of course, he did get headlines with this post, and now people are talking about it. He did make a very serious issue with Spotify public and start a conversation. So maybe his strategy did work. And now for some updates in the story. As of January 29th, 2022, Joni Mitchell has joined with Neil Young. Her open letter reads, I've decided to remove all my music from Spotify. Irresponsible people are spreading lies that are costing people their lives. I stand in solidarity with Neil Young and the global scientific and medical communities on this issue. And you know what? Fuck it. Neil Young and Joni Mitchell aren't the only ones that can write an open letter. An open letter to Spotify and Joe Rogan. I know I am nothing more than a paying customer to the Spotify service, and I want to be made clear that I think it is a great service, but I am canceling my family plan premium subscription. Neil Young makes a great point about the irresponsibility Joe Rogan treats his platform in respect to COVID vaccine misinformation. His brand of misinformation isn't the worst, but it's very much a serious problem. How many young people listen to his podcast and choose not to get the vaccine, then unwillingly spread this virus to someone who is immunocompromised, whose body failed to break down the vaccine, and died, all because one young person listened to Rogan and didn't get the vaccine? I'm willing to bet that number isn't zero, and that's a problem. I am inspired by Neil Young, but my ask of Spotify is much less than his. I am fine subscribing to Spotify while Joe Rogan is on the service. I think Rogan can be fun, but his views on the vaccine are very troubling. He spits them out way too often, and by his own admission, his medical advice should not be followed. I ask that Joe Rogan either stop talking about COVID and COVID vaccines, or if he insists to continue, that a medical expert sit in on his conversations to update him on the facts concerning the vaccine and the virus. I know I am just one subscriber, but I am now using my limited power to make my views on this known. Thank you.
Want people to walk down the street with a mask on?
Let's not start this, Joe.
Do you, though?
Let's not start this. Okay.
Let's start it.
I don't want to start this bullshit. I'm not going to sit here with no medical degree, listening to you with no medical degree, with an American flag behind you, smoking a cigar, acting like we know what's up better than the CDC.
People are not, they're just not being realistic, and they're not being scientific. If we followed the rules of science and everybody got vaccinated, we'd have a lot better chance. These things make me sound like an angry person, but really I'm actually very happy to be here on the planet to see this and to bear witness to what's going on. I'm not happy about what's happening, but I am definitely very happy and thankful that I was born at this time, that I get to see this. This is an amazing moment in human history. There's never been anything quite like this. And it's such we ought to be thankful that we have a chance to maybe show how to beat this. We might be able to beat this. We can still beat it. There's no reason why we can't. I mean, if we came together, we could take care of this. And I have confidence that we can.